Happy Wednesday. It's good to be with you today or whenever you end up watching this. Today we're going to look at Psalm chapter 63. We looked at Psalm 62 last week. I really got into that. So I thought, well, let's go into Psalm 63. We use Psalm 63 several times in the Desiring God series and use 2 or 3 verses, but this time we'll go through the whole Psalm. Psalm 63. Let's begin by reading it. You, God, are my God. Notice, you, God, are my God. I'm in a personal relationship with you, God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you. In a dry and parched land, or a weary land where there's no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you. On my bed, I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. Those who want to kill me will be destroyed. They will go down to the depths of the earth. They will be given over to the sword and become food for jackals. But the king will rejoice in God, and all who swear by God or who have taken an oath of loyalty to God will glory in him, while the mouths of liars will be silenced. This psalm is a confession of longing for God and for the security his presence offers when deadly enemies threatened. That longing is vividly described by the metaphor of thirst in verse 1 and hunger in verse 5. Like Psalm 62, this psalm is an implicit prayer. In Psalm 62, the psalmist declares to God that he trusts God alone. In this chapter, he declares that he longs for God and wants God more than anything else in life. According to tradition, the psalm is associated with David's stay in the Judean wilderness, either during his escape from King Saul or in a later period from Absalom, his own son, who betrayed him. There are occasions when one's awareness of his own mortality and of his own weakness thrust him upon God. There are occasions when one's awareness of his own mortality and of his own weakness thrust him upon God. Psalm 63 is from one who experiences this and finds his soul satisfied. The psalmist has known the delight of fellowship with God in the past, especially in the worship in the sanctuary in Jerusalem in verse 2. But now the psalmist is cut off from the familiar setting. He is in a dry and weary land, according to verse 1. Of course, dry and weary can describe the soul that needs to be refreshed and revived by God's Spirit. And he is a fugitive from enemies who would destroy him, according to verse 9. And we also have to deal with hostile forces, visible and invisible, that seek to destroy us and to ruin us spiritually. Under these conditions, the psalmist's thirst for God is especially acute. Now, in his moment of exile and peril, and in his spiritual dryness and weariness, he longs for some demonstration of the power, glory, and awesome splendor of God. A demonstration of the power, glory, and splendor of God he has formerly experienced with other worshipers at the temple or tabernacle. Even so, his heart will give way to praise again. So certain he is of God's continued presence in his life. So, number one, God, the soul's desire. Psalm 63, verses 1 through 4. The deep personal feeling of the psalmist toward God is evident in the opening words. Oh God, you are my God. All that is said about God elsewhere in the Psalms is summarized in this simple confession of faith in this chapter. You are my rock, my high tower, my defense, God of all power, God of love, righteous Lord. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Earnestly, I seek you. The verb can mean to seek early in the morning or at the dawn or first thing. The psalmist is saying, I will seek the Lord first thing. By extension, it means to do a thing as a matter of first importance or to do it earnestly with a sense of urgency. Thus, the NIV translation. For David, this is a matter of first importance. He does seek God earnestly, or he pursues God passionately. The idea is, God, you're my God, and I exert myself to reach you. I exert myself to connect to you. His whole being, or soul and body, cries out for God and for nothing else. Only the presence of God in his life can satisfy the longing of his soul. In a dry and weary land, these words should be understood as descriptive of the region in which the psalmist finds himself and not merely metaphorically. This desolate area is a far cry from the peaceful security and joy he has known in the past. The psalmist's search for God arises from the psalmist's past experience of fellowship and enjoyment of God's goodness and the company of fellow worshipers in Jerusalem. Now, we Christians, we who trust and follow Jesus, citizens of the new Jerusalem, the heavenly Jerusalem, we have experienced the goodness of God in the person of Jesus Christ. We have seen the glory and power and steadfast love of God in Jesus. For us, Jesus is the new temple of God, the ultimate dwelling place of God on earth. Through his Spirit, we are in him and he is in us, making us the temple of God during this new era begun by Jesus' first coming. In the sanctuary, the psalmist had experienced the nearness of God in his power and glory. And hopefully we can all say that about Jesus. In Jesus, we have experienced the nearness of God in his power and glory. But back to the historical situation. David, or whoever wrote this psalm, had experienced the nearness of God in his power and glory at the sanctuary with fellow worshipers. So now, with greater intensity, because of the adverse circumstances he's in at the present time, he longs for God anew. Folks, adverse, difficult, harsh circumstances can make us long for God more and motivate us to pursue God with greater intensity. These circumstances can make us desperate for God and hungry for a renewed relationship or a renewed friendship with Him. Memories of the past have also stirred within the psalmist the present desire for the divine presence. Recollections of God's past mercies have rekindled faith and hope, and this calls for praise. Verse 3 says, because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. Is David saying, why should I worry about life so long as I am assured of God's loyal, committed, covenant love. It would seem so. Or stated conversely, what would life be? What would life be like without that love? What would life be worth without that love? Life in fellowship with God, if only for a moment, would be more to be desired than an eternity without Him. Yet David contemplates an ongoing, continuing relationship with God, and he will go on blessing the Lord and thinking highly of the Lord and speaking well of the Lord and singing his praises for the rest of his life. And he will rise above the dryness and the weariness of the present time. I sure hope we can all say to God today, I will praise you. As long as I live, for the rest of my life, I'm going to praise you. I will praise you because of your steadfast love. Remember Romans 8:37, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. Because your steadfast, committed, generous, self-sacrificial love is better than life, I will glorify you always. Because your love is much better than life itself, I will glorify you always. Number two, God, the soul satisfaction, or the soul's satisfaction, verses 5 through 8. In Psalm 23, the poet wrote, my cup overflows. Here he says, I'm satisfied. I am satisfied with a rich and sumptuous feast, verse 5. The satisfying feast is a metaphor for the joy, greatness, and abundance of grace associated with the love of God. We feast on God's love and we are satisfied. From the figure of thirst in verse 1, he moves to that of hunger in verse 5, only to affirm that the deepest longings of his soul for God have been fully met. My soul will be satisfied, and my mouth will praise you with joyful lips. His deep satisfaction in the Lord is such as to bring a song of praise and gratitude from his heart to be sounded with singing lips. This is followed by 3 verses that are a unit, including both a confession of the help the psalmist has received from God and a statement of his desire to remain close to God. Verse 6, on my bed I remember you, and I think of you through the watches of the night. Spurgeon observed, if day's cares tempt us to forget God, it is well that night's quiet should lead us to remember him. Whether during a sleepless night or an intentional all-night prayer vigil, the thoughts of the psalmist are upon God. God had been his heart's desire, and God is now remembered. More than this, he meditates upon God, and this is of greater significance than the bare remembrance of him. The New Living Translation says, I lie awake thinking of you. I lie awake thinking of you. Not thinking of all my anxieties and cares and burdens, but I lie awake thinking of you, meditating on you through the night. The result of such meditation has convinced the psalmist of 2 things in our text. God, you are my help, and your right hand upholds me. His reaction also has been twofold. I sing in the shadow of your wings, and my soul clings to you. Psalm 63, verse 7 says, because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. The Lord helps us or supports us and sustains us. He hovers over us and protects us like a mother bird, protecting her young ones who cannot defend themselves. Our response? We sing. Gratitude and joy are implied here. The next verse says, my soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. Think about a parent and a child crossing the street or walking together in a big crowd. The mother or father holds the child's hand with a firm grip and will not let go. The parent's aim is to keep the child safe and secure. And that is the picture here. God will not let go. Our response? We don't try to get free from the grasp of our Father's hand and run away. We cling to our God. He wants to be close to us. We want to be close to Him. We cling to Him through our faith, faithfulness, and perseverance. And in His love and faithfulness to us, He enables us to cling to Him. We are able to cling to Him because He holds us up with His mighty right hand. God's not literally right-handed. It's a symbol of strength and might, because for most people, the right hand is the strong hand. And third, God, the soul's defense. 63 verses 9 through 11. Only now does he give thought to those who are the cause of his present condition as a fugitive or an exile from home, those who seek to destroy him. He knows that his life is in jeopardy, but he also knows that God is his only defense. With confidence, he states that God's judgment will fall upon them. Their end will be humiliation and death. David will be lifted up as king, and they will be seriously demoted. They will be lowered to the depths of the earth. A picture of total, utter, devastating ruin and defeat. Listen to verses 9 through 11 from the Common English Bible. But what about those people who want to destroy me? Let them go down into the bowels of the earth. Let their blood flow by the sword. Let them be food for wild jackals. But the king should rejoice in God. Everyone who swears by God or takes an oath in God's name should give praise when the mouths of liars are shut for good. The point is, the enemies of God will be judged and destroyed, and the true worshipers of God will be vindicated, and they will be rewarded. In this psalm, David's longing for God is satisfied as he worships, meditates, and then goes into battle. The sequence is crucial. We too must worship and meditate before we fight our spiritual battles, because we can only fight our spiritual battles and overcome them in the power of God. We can only fight and overcome in the power of God. So we need to stay close to God. And this is emphasized in so many Psalms. We need to stay close to God. We need to cling to God and be upheld by his right hand. And as this becomes our spiritual lifestyle, we too will see God's power and glory. And actually, we'll see more clearly than David or the psalmist did in the sanctuary, because we're able to see God in Jesus Christ. So as this becomes our spiritual lifestyle, we worship, we meditate, and we go out to fight in a spiritual battle. As this becomes our spiritual lifestyle, we too will see God's power and glory, and our hunger for God will be satisfied. We will delight in him, and he will delight in us. That's all I got for you tonight from the Psalms. I'm not sure if I'll do another Psalm next week or I may move in a different direction. But I hope to see you Sunday morning at 10:30 in person or online. God bless you. God loves you, and so do I. Take care.